Tahoe's crest fluttered in agitation as he scrolled through the new galactic map updates. Something wasn't right. The Calixian cartographer had spent decades mapping star systems for the Galactic Consortium, but this latest official release made no sense. "Computer, zoom to Sector 7K, he commanded. A holographic display expanded, revealing the edge of known space, the border where human space began. And then, nothing. The map simply ended, replaced by warning symbols in 12 major galactic languages. Tahoe's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. This wasn't standard protocol. Every map had boundaries, certainly, but they faded naturally into unexplored regions. They didn't simply stop with ominous warnings. The next morning, Tahoe approached senior cartographer Minho in the central mapping chamber. The elder Calixian was bent over a workstation, his scaled fingers adjusting stellar coordinates. "Senior Minho, I found something irregular in the latest map distribution," Tahoe said, keeping his voice low. He displayed the border region on his portable projector. "The human space boundary. It's marked as a hard stop. No data beyond. Is this an error?" Minho glanced at the projection, then quickly shut it off. His crest flattened against his skull, a sign of extreme discomfort among their kind. "That is not an error," Minho said flatly. "The map is correct as distributed. But the matter is closed, junior cartographer." Minho's voice had an edge Tahoe had never heard before. "Focus on the Orion Spur revisions you were assigned. Some boundaries exist for good reasons." Tahoe returned to his workstation, but couldn't concentrate. This violation of cartographic standards bothered him deeply. Maps were meant to represent truth, not hide it. After his shift ended, Tahoe didn't go home. Instead, he took the lift down to the archive levels. The consortium's historical records stretched back thousands of years, including maps from every era. If there was a truth to find, it would be there. The archives were nearly empty this late. Tahoe used his credentials to access the historical cartography section and began pulling records from before human contact. He compared them with maps made a century later, then 2 centuries later. What he found disturbed him greatly. The earliest maps showed regions beyond what was now human space, detailed star charts of vast territories. But in each successive version, those sections shrank, were simplified, and eventually vanished altogether. Someone had been systematically erasing space from the maps. "You won't find answers here," a voice said from behind him. Tahoe spun around, his crest flaring in surprise. A female Calixian stood watching him, her scales darker than most of their kind, a sign of prolonged exposure to a different sun than their homeworlds. "I'm Ju," she said, approaching his workstation. "I specialize in Terran Consortium historical relations. How did you know what I was researching?" She smiled, showing the sharp teeth their species normally kept hidden. "Because every few decades, someone notices the same thing you did. The questions you're asking have been asked before." Tahoe studied her. "And what happened to those who asked?" "Some were reassigned to distant outposts. Others had their credentials revoked. A few simply disappeared." She picked up one of his historical map projections. "You're taking a significant risk, cartographer Tahoe. Truth is worth risks." He gestured to the maps. "Do you know what's happening here?" Ju hesitated. "I studied at a Terran university for 12 years. That's rare for our kind. What I learned there." She paused, looking around to ensure they were alone. "Let's say there are reasons the maps end where they do. Political reasons, scientific, survival reasons." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Have you never wondered why humans, a species that joined the consortium only 8 centuries ago, were granted such an unusually large autonomous region? Or why no consortium military vessels patrol their borders?" Tahoe felt a chill run through his scales. "I assumed it was diplomatic courtesy." Ju laughed softly. "The consortium doesn't grant courtesy of that magnitude. It grants concessions based on power." She began shutting down his workstation. You should leave these archives now. The systems record everyone who accesses these files. Wait, Tahoe said. I need to know more. Juwu looked at him with what seemed like genuine concern. This pursuit could end your career, possibly worse. Are you certain you want to continue? Tahoe thought about the maps, about the hidden truth, about all the questions now swirling in his mind. He straightened his posture, his crest rising with determination. I'm a cartographer. Our purpose is to make the unknown known. If something is being hidden, I need to understand why. Juwu nodded slowly. Meet me tomorrow at the Old Market District, near the Fountain of Seven Moons. Come alone, and make sure you're not followed. She turned to leave, then added, and Tahoe, delete your search history before you go. As Tahoe watched her disappear into the archives, he felt both excitement and dread. Whatever lay beyond the boundary of human space, someone didn't want it found. But as his people's ancient saying went, the path to truth is marked by danger signs. He would follow this path, wherever it led. The Old Market District buzzed with activity as Tahoe made his way through the crowded streets. Merchants from a dozen worlds hawked their wares, filling the air with strange smells and sounds. He kept his head down, careful not to draw attention, as Juwu had warned. The Fountain of Seven Moons stood in the center of the square, its waters shimmering with bioluminescent algae imported from the water world of Helixia. Tahoe spotted Juwu sitting on a bench nearby, dressed in plain clothes that hid her distinctive scale patterns. You weren't followed? She asked as he approached. No. I took 3 different transport tubes and doubled back twice. Juwu nodded. Good. Follow me. She led him through winding alleys to a small door tucked between 2 larger buildings. The sign above read Interspecies Cultural Archives in faded lettering. Inside, the air smelled of old data crystals and preservation fluid. This is a private archive, Juwu explained, locking the door behind them. Funded by independent researchers. The consortium doesn't monitor it closely because they think it only contains cultural artifacts. She approached a shelf and pressed her palm against it. The shelf slid aside, revealing a hidden room filled with ancient data terminals. This is where we keep what the consortium tries to erase, she said. Tahoe's crest rose in surprise. This is illegal. So it is hiding the truth about entire regions of space. Juwu countered. She activated a terminal. What do you know about first contact with humans? Tahoe recited what every schoolchild learned. Consortium explorers discovered Earth 827 years ago. Humans were a developing species who had achieved basic spaceflight. They were peacefully integrated into galactic society. Juwu snorted. That's the official version. She inserted a data crystal into the terminal. This is what really happened. The screen flickered to life, showing footage Tahoe had never seen. A consortium first contact vessel approaching Earth. But instead of the primitive world he expected, the footage showed massive orbital structures, energy shields, and advanced vessels moving with impossible speed. This can't be right, Tahoe whispered. The records say humans had only reached their moon. The records were altered, Juwu said simply. By the time the consortium found Earth, humans had already established colonies on Mars and were mining the asteroid belt. Their technology was different from ours, not more advanced in all ways, but different, unsettling. The footage showed the first contact team's shuttle being escorted by sleek human ships to a massive space station. The team expected to be teaching humans about galactic civilization. Juwu continued. Instead, they found themselves negotiating with a species that already understood concepts our scientists were only theorizing about. She switched to another file. This one a written report marked classified. Diplomatic incident at Proxima Centauri. 3 years after first contact, a minor trade dispute escalated when a Baraxian merchant attempted to establish mining rights in a human-claimed system. Juwu's voice grew quieter. The Baraxians sent a small fleet to intimidate the human outpost. Standard procedure for their kind. Show strength, force concessions. Tahoe read ahead in the report, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly. This says the human response ship wasn't even armed. It didn't need to be, Ju said. The report is sanitized, but witness accounts say the human vessel simply projected some kind of field. Every system on the Baraxian ships just stopped. Weapons, engines, life support. The humans restarted life support only after the Baraxians surrendered. Tahoe scrolled through more files, each describing similar incidents. Small confrontations that ended with shocking demonstrations of human capability, followed by diplomatic concessions from the consortium. Then there's this, Ju said, bringing up a heavily redacted document. The Callisto demonstration. Most of the text was blacked out, but Tahoe could make out fragments. Military response force. Disappeared from sensors. Reappeared in Jovian orbit. Recommend immediate cessation of all. Sovereignty of human space must be. What happened? Tahoe asked. The full story is hidden, but I've pieced together that about 50 years after first contact, the Consortium Security Council grew concerned about human expansion and capabilities. They sent a substantial fleet, not for attack, but for observation near Jupiter. She pointed to the fragments. Whatever happened next was so alarming that the consortium immediately granted humans an autonomous region 5 times larger than any new species had ever received, and established the boundary protocols we still follow today. Tahoe sat back, trying to process everything. But why would the consortium hide this? Why act like humans are just another member species? Pride, Ju said, and fear. The consortium presents itself as the pinnacle of civilization, the benevolent guiding hand for lesser species. To admit they encountered a species that could challenge them technologically, one that forced major concessions, would undermine their authority. She shut down the terminal. There's more. The historical records show the consortium tried to restrict human expansion once, about 300 years ago. After that, the maps change. Everything beyond human space was gradually erased. What's out there? Tahoe whispered. That, Ju said, her eyes reflecting the dim light of the archive, is what we need to find out. Because whatever it is, it's something the consortium decided we're better off not knowing about, and the humans agreed to guard. Tahoe struggled to maintain his composure as Commander Kim led him through the human vessel. The ship's interior defied everything he knew about spacecraft design. Corridors seemed to bend in impossible ways, and several times they passed through doorways that appeared to open into spaces that couldn't possibly fit within the ship's external dimensions. "You're noticing our spatial architecture," Kim remarked, seeing Tahoe's confusion. "Don't worry, most visitors find it disorienting at first." They entered a circular room with a large holographic display in its center. Unlike the harsh, data-dense displays of consortium ships, this one showed a flowing, organic representation of space around them. "Please, sit." Kim gestured to a chair that seemed to grow seamlessly from the floor. When Tahoe hesitantly sat down, the material adjusted perfectly to his Calixian physiology. "You're not what I expected," Tahoe admitted. Kim smiled. "Humans rarely are. Your consortium portrays us as either primitive newcomers or dangerous recluses. Neither is accurate." "Then what is the truth?" Kim touched the display, and the image zoomed out to show the entire galaxy. "When we first encountered your consortium, we quickly realized something important. In galactic politics, appearance matters more than reality. Those perceived as weak are exploited." The display highlighted several star systems. These were the homeworlds of species that joined the consortium as junior members. Within 3 generations, their resources were depleted, their colonies restricted, their people serving consortium interests. Tahoe's crest flattened with discomfort. "That's not how the consortium is supposed to operate." "But it is how it does operate," Kim said gently. "We decided to project strength from the beginning. Not because we're naturally aggressive. We're actually quite peaceful when allowed to be, but because your consortium only respects power." The display shifted to show Earth and its solar system. "Before we met your people, Humans had already discovered principles of physics your scientists haven't yet grasped. Not because we're smarter, but because we approached problems differently. What principles? Tahoe asked. The relationship between consciousness and reality, for one. The artificial division your science makes between observer and observed limited your understanding. Kim waved a hand, and a small object appeared floating above his palm. Literally appeared, not from any visible technology. We learned that mind and matter are more connected than your physics allows for. Tahoe stared in astonishment. That's impossible. Not impossible. Just operating on principles your science doesn't recognize yet. The object disappeared. We also developed what you might call dimensional manipulation, the ability to fold space in ways that allow instantaneous travel, or to create spaces larger inside than outside. Like this ship, Tahoe realized. Exactly. But these technologies were just the beginning. Shortly after developing them, we discovered something far more important. Kim's expression grew serious. We weren't alone on the frontier. The display changed again, showing regions of space beyond human territory. Tahoe saw strange structures and unfamiliar star patterns. There are things out there, cartographer. Ancient species and entities that view younger races as either resources or threats. Some consume entire civilizations. Others twist reality itself in ways that drive people mad. Images flashed across the display. Vast, incomprehensible shapes moving between stars. Worlds covered in strange growths. Creatures that seemed to exist partially in another dimension. When we discovered these threats, we realized something crucial. The consortium was unaware and unprepared. Your defenses, your weapons, your very understanding of reality, all inadequate. Why didn't you warn us? Tahoe asked, his mind reeling. We tried. Kim sighed. But your leaders were more concerned with maintaining authority than acknowledging external threats. They saw our warnings as attempts to gain influence. The Callisto demonstration, Tahoe whispered. Kim nodded. A regrettable necessity. When your consortium sent a military fleet to observe our Jupiter colonies, we needed to prove our capabilities without causing harm. We used dimensional folding to instantly relocate every ship into perfect orbit around Callisto. You teleported an entire battle fleet. Tahoe's crest rose in shock. It was the kindest warning we could give. We needed your leaders to understand that challenging us would be futile, but also that we had no interest in conquest. After that, they granted us our territorial boundaries, not out of respect, but fear. Kim touched the display again. It showed a network of stations positioned along the edge of human space. For the past 8 centuries, we've maintained a containment barrier along this border. We intercept and neutralize threats from beyond. We monitor dimensional weak points. We ensure that the horrors out there never reach consortium space. All this time, Tahoe struggled to comprehend. You've been protecting us. Without recognition or thanks, Kim agreed, which is exactly how we prefer it. We're not interested in galactic politics or power struggles. We simply want to exist in peace and ensure others can do the same. But why the secrecy? Why not tell people what you're doing? Kim's expression grew troubled. Knowledge brings responsibility. If the consortium knew what exists beyond our space, they would be forced to prepare, to militarize, to fundamentally alter their society. Or worse, some would try to exploit these entities for power. The commander leaned forward. And frankly, there would be panic. Some truths are too heavy for unprepared minds. Better that your people live in peace, believing the galaxy ends at our border, than live in terror of what waits beyond. Tahoe sat in silence, processing everything. After a long moment, he asked, "Why tell me all this now?" "Because you were brave enough to ask questions," Kim said simply. "And perhaps because, after centuries of silence, even guardians occasionally wish to be understood." Tahoe stood before the Consortium Cartographic Council, his crest carefully maintained in a neutral position despite his inner turmoil. 3 weeks had passed since his encounter aboard the human vessel. 3 weeks of carefully considering what to do with the knowledge he now carried. Junior cartographer Toto, the council chair, spoke. You have submitted an unusual paper regarding the border regions of human space. Please explain your findings to the council. Tahoe activated his presentation display. The hologram showed his meticulously prepared star charts, all technically accurate, but deliberately incomplete. Honorable Council, he began, my recent survey of the human space boundary revealed significant navigational hazards that explain why this region has traditionally marked the effective edge of our maps. He displayed readings of the gravitational anomalies they had detected, real data, but with critical details omitted. These spatial distortions make reliable navigation beyond this point nearly impossible with current consortium technology. Additionally, the energy patterns suggest natural phenomena that could damage standard drive systems. It wasn't entirely a lie. The barriers maintained by humans did indeed make passage impossible for consortium vessels. But Tahoe carefully avoided mentioning that these barriers were artificial or why they existed. Therefore, he concluded, I recommend that official maps continue to mark human space as the practical boundary of navigable space, with appropriate hazard warnings. Further research may be conducted, but only with specialized equipment and extensive safety precautions. The council members exchanged glances. Tahoe held his breath. Your findings align with established cartographic practice, the chair finally said. The recommendation is approved. You are to be commended for your thorough analysis, Junior Cartographer. Tahoe's crest relaxed slightly. Thank you, Honorable Council. Later, in Juwoo's small archive room, Tahoe finally allowed his true feelings to show. His crest fluttered with a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. They accepted it, he told Juwoo. The official maps will remain unchanged. Juwoo studied him carefully. You didn't tell them everything Commander Kim showed you. How could I? Tahoe paced the small room. Panic would spread throughout the consortium if people knew what exists beyond human space. Kim was right. Some truths are too heavy. So the humans continue their silent watch, and the consortium continues in blissful ignorance, Juwoo said quietly. Not complete ignorance, Tahoe countered. I've been thinking about something Kim said before I left the Horizon Guardian asterisk, that after centuries of silence, even Guardians occasionally wish to be understood. He activated a small data crystal, projecting a new proposal. I've drafted a plan for a cultural exchange program with human space. Small at first, scholarly visits, collaborative research on safe topics. Nothing that would raise suspicion. Juwoo's eyes widened as she understood. A bridge between our worlds. A way for humans to be recognized for at least some of what they do, without revealing the full truth. Exactly. Commander Kim has already expressed interest. The program would be strictly voluntary, with careful screening of participants. 6 months later, the Cultural Exchange Initiative launched with little fanfare. Most in the consortium saw it as a minor academic program of no particular importance. The Cartographic Council, pleased with Tahoe's practical approach to the border question, endorsed it without much scrutiny. What few knew was that each consortium visitor to human space was carefully selected, individuals like Tahoe and Juwoo, who asked thoughtful questions and could handle difficult truths. People who might someday help prepare the consortium for a time when the full reality could no longer be hidden. 1 year after his return, Tahoe received a small package. Inside was an object that appeared to be a simple desk ornament, a crystalline sphere on a black base. But when activated in private, it projected a map unlike any in the consortium archives. This map showed what lay beyond human space, vast regions where reality itself grew thin, where ancient entities that defied categorization drifted between stars. It showed dimensional rifts that periodically opened, allowing nightmarish intrusions from planes of existence the consortium had no words to describe. And it showed something else, a network of human outposts, research stations, and defense platforms. Watchtowers standing at the edge of darkness, maintaining barriers that had protected the consortium for centuries without recognition or thanks. Tahoe often sat alone in his quarters, studying this true map. Sometimes he questioned whether he had made the right choice in keeping these secrets, but then he would look at the flowing pattern of inhabited consortium worlds. Trillions of beings living in peace, raising families, pursuing knowledge, creating art. All possible because somewhere, human guardians stood vigilant against cosmic horrors. On the base of the map projector, Commander Kim had engraved a message in both human and Calixian script. The heaviest burden of knowledge is choosing who must share its weight. As Tahoe powered down the map for the night, watching the horrors beyond human space fade into darkness, he whispered a phrase he had learned from Commander Kim. "Sleep well, Galaxy. Your guardians are watching." The end.